to get into position while I talk for a second. The drama that we're bringing forth, Cindy found this several weeks ago and brought it to Allie's attention. She brought it to me. We were all excited about the message that is in this little skit. We don't know if everything's going to plan out perfectly because things rarely occur as we expect. And the whole point of this is that we dream sometimes, and we dream big, and we have ideas about what we're going to be and accomplish and what God's going to do in our lives. And it doesn't always turn out the way that we want. But we can trust that God is good and that God has a plan. And so as you watch this today, look for the messages in this little program, but look at the bigger message of the cross as well. And let God speak to your hearts about your role, your vision, your dreams, and God's goodness toward you. Are we all ready? Sure. That didn't sound very confident. I am confident in these guys, and I'm confident that God is good and that he's going to anoint and empower for this. So y'all enjoy.
Once upon a mountaintop, 3 little trees stood and dreamed of what they wanted to become when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars and said,
I want to hold treasure. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I'll be the most beautiful treasure chest in the world.
The second little tree looked out at the small stream trickling by on its way to the ocean.
I want to be traveling mighty waters and carrying powerful kings. I'll be the strongest ship in the world.
The third little tree looked down into the valley below, where busy men and women worked in a busy town.
I don't want to leave the mountaintop at all. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they'll raise their eyes to heaven and think of God. I will be the tallest tree in the world.
Years passed. The rain came, the sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. One day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the first tree and said, with a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell.
Now I shall make a beautiful chest. I shall hold wonderful treasure.
The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and said, with a swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell.
Now I shall sail mighty waters. I shall be a strong ship for mighty kings.
The third tree felt his heart sink when the last woodcutter looked his way. He stood straight and tall and pointed bravely to heaven, but the woodcutter never even looked up. With a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought her to a carpenter's shop. But the tree was fashioned into a feed box for animals. The once beautiful tree was not covered with gold or treasure. She was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took him to a shipyard. But no mighty sailing ship was made that day. Instead, the once strong tree was hammered and sawed into a simple fishing boat. He was too small and too weak to sail to an ocean or even a river. Instead, he was taken to a little lake. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter cut him into strong beams and left him in a lumber yard.
What happened? All I ever wanted was to stay on the mountaintop and point to God.
Many days and nights passed. The three trees nearly forgot their dreams. But one night, starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby in the feed box. Suddenly, the first tree knew she was holding the greatest treasure in the world. Sometime later, one evening, a tired traveler and his friends crowded into an old fishing boat. The traveler fell asleep as the second tree quietly sailed out into the lake. Soon, a thundering and thrashing storm arose. The little tree shuddered. He knew he did not have the strength to carry so many passengers safely through the wind and rain. But the tired man awoke. He stood up, stretched out his hand, and said, The storm stopped as quickly as it had begun, and suddenly the second tree knew he was carrying the King of heaven and earth.
I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
One Friday morning, the third tree was startled when his beams were yanked from the forgotten woodpile. He flinched as he was carried through an angry, jeering crowd. He shuddered when soldiers nailed a man's hands to him.
What's happening? Why are all these people so angry? Why are you doing this to this man?
He felt ugly and harsh and cruel.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. And why should I gain from his reward? I cannot give an answer, but this I know
But on Sunday morning, when the sun rose and the earth trembled with joy beneath her, the third tree said,
Now I know that God's love has changed everything. It has made me strong. And from now on, when people see me, they'll think of God.
And that was better than being the tallest tree in the world. The next time you feel down because you didn't get what you wanted, just remember that God has something better for you. He has a purpose for each of our lives, a plan greater than we can imagine. Happy Easter.